In my experience, feeling lonely, feeling like something bad is going to happen to me, and missing my culture are three of the toughest things that I've encountered living in a predominantly white city as a gay black man. Starting off with feeling lonely, it just kind of was almost as if I would be in predominantly white spaces and I would just kind of feel like the unicorn there. So it was almost like I was always the one that was getting all the attention, the stares, and the one with the different perspective or the oddball out, or just it was very obvious and clear to notice me, see me, point me out because I was the black one in the crowd. And typically, if I wasn't the black one, only black one in the crowd, I would be the only black gay one in the crowd. And that started to get to me, and I started to just internalize that as I was believing that I can't connect with these folks, I can't relate to these folks, I can't be here. And that belief, which is why I keep saying belief, because I feel like it boils down to a belief that you have, not an actual fact. You are believing this in your head. I was believing this in my head, and that was causing me to act a certain way. For me, my beliefs are the foundation to everything in my life, and having a belief that I couldn't connect with white folks started to make me feel lonely. In addition to that belief, I just began to, or not even in addition, because of that belief, I started to just focus on that. I just would be in conversation with folks. For example, my partner is white, and when we would get together with their friends, it was almost like immediately I would pick up on nuances of, I don't listen to the same music, I don't drink the same drinks, I don't, just like a lot of I don'ts and differences that were amongst me and his white friends, and that further instilled just this, I don't belong here, I don't need to be here, I do not relate, I do not connect. So what I started to focus on was just in this space, because I believe life is okay exactly as it is. Yeah, maybe it would be nicer if I went back home to Cleveland with my family, but I don't really like Cleveland because Cleveland isn't LGBT friendly, even though it is a little bit more diverse where my family lives. But I was missing that just reassuring, and affirming environment of it's okay to be gay. And here in Columbus, it's a lot more safe and comfortable for me to be out here, and I don't want to sacrifice that for just more culture in Cleveland. And also Cleveland is a little bit more dangerous, but nonetheless, I had to learn that making connections was going to look differently here. It wasn't going to be as easy as it was when I was in high school, being in classes with other black folks all day, every day throughout the week. And in college, I was going to have to maintain relationships. So I think in general, just maintaining connections, even as an adult, is work. But especially when you are believing that you are super different from other folks, it's going to take even more work, and it's going to take even more focus for you to shift that belief and just making connections with white folks. It's an art form almost. It takes a lot of just, which is my next thing. My secret is I just have been learning to embody listening. Instead of me always talking to people about what I like, what I want to do, and finding differences amongst myself and others, I just started to listen to people. I got extremely curious as to who are you? What is your life like? And naturally, by being more attuned and more aware of what is going on with other folks and not being so worried about myself, I started to find connections with folks. I mean, like, who would ever thought that if you kind of stop being so self-centered, you would actually figure out how you are connected to folks and connect better with folks. In addition to feeling lonely, I would start to feel like something bad would happen to me, and a lot of this came up when Black Lives Matter was like right at its peak. So here in Columbus, we did have some rioting and protests. Well, wait, was it rioting? I mean, it wasn't like anything extreme or dangerous, but we did have just a lot of protests, and it created this like just an energy and ambiance and environment of fear between black and white folks. And my partner's white, his family's white, of course, his friends are white. Pretty much half of my friends at the time were white, and where I work is predominantly white. So it was kind of like everywhere I went, I kind of had this like overwhelming feeling of, things feel different, things feel weird. with a lot of processing with my counselor, I did realize that it was just a lot going on at the time. So if you're like me, that culture of fear that kind of came about with the Black Lives Matter, it just everything was aware. We were so aware what was going on that it kind of made things a little weird for a while. And it took me a minute to kind of like acknowledge that, accept that, and realize that. And after realizing that, I realized that I don't have to fear. I know that just kind of like is very general, but I mean, follow me with this. When it comes to being fearful and afraid of specifically police officers that might do something to you or harm you or treat us differently because of the color of our skin, that is not a representation of all white folks. And I think that that is kind of the narrative that was kind of being programmed into my head, which is why I stopped keeping up with every shooting, every little thing, because it just created a lot of distrust and fear amongst me and my white peers. And I just had to realize there are safe folks, there are safe spaces of white people that only cherish and love and celebrate me, just like vice versa. I celebrate and cherish white folks and don't ever want them to fear being around me, which some folks would look at me as a black man before they even see that I'm gay and assume that I'm aggressive and get nervous. So just like I want folks to feel safe and secure, and well, not safe and secure, I want them to feel safe and know that I'm a safe person and would never do anything to harm them or put them in harm's way. There are white folks out there too. And I had to shift that perspective, even though I knew it all along, which is why those folks were attracted to me, like into my life. A lot of fear was coming up for me at that time, and I had to like bring it back down to base level. It's like, what are you believing? And I'm not saying that every white person is going to treat you with abundance amounts of love. There are some that still do not care for us just because of the color of our skin. But what I'm saying is that is not where you should be. Those are not the folks you should surround yourself with. Find the safe spaces, find the safe friends, and just hold on to those. The third tough thing about being in a predominantly white city as a gay black man is kind of missing that culture. Back in Cleveland, I got a little bit of it, and especially when I lived in New York, which was super expensive, which is why I'm not there anymore. But I got a lot of culture and diversity, and I love and miss that. So here, there is not much, maybe a little bit, and I could work harder to seek those spaces out, but actually in my experience, which I'm just gonna be honest, by the way that I talk and the partner that I date, I kind of get shunned from spaces because I am not black enough. So if that's your experience, I'm pretty sure you're like, you understand what I'm saying. It's like almost like another layer of just like, not only do I miss culture of black folks, but when I do try to go around black folks, I'm not even black enough to be around them. So you don't even really get to experience that at all. So that's been the toughest part for me. So for those of you that are considered black enough in your spaces, congratulations. You probably don't need the rest of this or the rest of my tips. But for those of you that are like me, that they think that we're whitewashed. They think that the way that I speak, the person that I date, and the friends that I have, and I guess how I carry myself, which maybe I'll dig deeper into that, but I really want to know from like other folks' perspective, because this is just who I am. I've never been not who I was, and it's almost like I need your perspective to let me know, why do you think that I am whitewashed, and why does me being whitewashed mean that I'm not black enough and mean that I'm not welcome in these spaces? So for me, the hardest part was not being able to get that easy connection, that I can't even say the word, familiarity. You know what I'm saying? I was missing that. I was craving that. Just the music, the culture, the food, the dancing, just the like, that to me is like, I love just being around black folks that are in their element, and I miss that. To me, that reminds me of home, and I didn't realize how much I missed it until I started going home a lot more recently, and I'm just like, dang, I do not get that in Columbus. I am pretty much surrounded by white folks, which they do have their own culture, and I appreciate it, but when it comes to my culture, it's not seen much here, and that can be very tough. So for me, the biggest thing that I've done is I've just curated my spaces around me to reflect the culture that I came from. I play R&B music all the time. I light incense. I get my favorite drinks. I just create like what it was like to be at home here. And a big thing for me was, or my family was, line dancing actually. So one of me and my mother's favorite line dances is the Cleveland Shuffle. I think the toughest thing was not being able able to do that year after year at our family reunions because we don't really go as much. And I taught my boyfriend, I taught him how to do it, and we actually went back up to Cleveland, and he was with me and my Black family doing line dances. And that's what I'm saying, is just bring the culture here, bring it around you, teach and introduce your friends what it is, what it's about, what you eat, what the foods are like. I've even brought food back to his family and introduced them to, this is how we make things. I remember they came up one time, and I don't think this is necessarily a Black thing, or I don't know what it is, or a Southern thing, but I just know it's near and dear to my heart and from what I learned and what I got from my family. Instead of cooking pancakes in butter or like spraying it with a non-stick spray, we actually use oils. So we get like a nice slight crisp on the edges, and we like cook them in oil, and it makes them taste so much better, and it gives them that kind of like griddle taste. And I made that for them, and I also made what my family always makes is these like home fries, and really good, season them very well, like butter, same, like we sauce things up a little bit more. So instead of me moping and groaning about how, oh, it's all these white people and all I get is white people food, I introduced them to how I make my food. And now his mother's kind of like, oh, like, what did you use to make this? What did you use to do that? And I'm kind of introducing them to my culture. So it's like, you don't have to be just completely obsolete from your culture. You can bring it to other people and introduce them to it. And another big thing that I'm going to start incorporating when I save up more money is just traveling, visiting more places, and not even just Black culture, just cultures in general. I just miss that melting pot feeling of being in New York. And I think when you are around a lot of white folks, which is the majority in this country, it can be kind of tough because you feel ostracized sometimes, and you feel like you are left out. And sometimes you don't feel like being vested in that culture all the time. And to be pulled away and be in another minority culture, it just is kind of like a change of space, a change of speed. And for me, I love change. I love different things. I love trying different stuff. I love being adventurous, and take a couple trips, save up for that. Even if it's not even leaving the actual state, just going for like a day trip and going to a popular restaurant and just experiencing that and just being in just another culture's ambiance. So living in a predominantly white city as a gay Black man can be very tough. But like I said, I think that learning the art of connecting with folks, for me, that's listening, and also just being mindful of the spaces that you're in, the people that you surround yourself with. Make sure they're safe, make sure they love you, make sure they're not judging you or putting you in harm's way, or don't make you feel fearful. And if they are, speak up and have that conversation. You should be around folks that you trust and feel comfortable around. And then 3, bring your culture to them. And if you're really craving that, visit home, travel, and just be immersed in a different culture, a different ambiance. Just leave your space. For me, ultimately, I've learned, and this is extremely recent, like this is not my experience the entire time that I've been living in Columbus. It just kind of came up for me recently in like the past couple months, just because I was very depressed and sad and lonely and feeling uncomfortable, and I had to shift perspectives because moving from Columbus was not the best strategy or move for me right now, just because of other goals that I want to attain. So I had to change my perspective, and I'm just introducing this to you because this is how I cope. This is how I make my being here better, is I just kind of embrace some of this stuff now and say, hey, it's nice to be the person that has the different perspective. It's nice to be the person that can add a spin to things. It's nice to be a person that isn't like everyone else. Sometimes it is fun to be like that unique unicorn that they don't know what's gonna come out of my mouth, and they just enjoy being around me because I'm so unique. Which actually, I just got that feedback from work. They're like, you are just like awesome. You always have a different perspective. You just bring a lot to the table, and that was very affirming. And in addition, I would just want to say the grass to me is always greener where you water it. So yeah, there might be better lawns other places, and I'm not saying not to explore those other options, but if it's not an option for you, like it isn't for me right now, water the grass, water the turf that you're on right now. And on that note, remember to be the change you wish to see today, and take care of yourself.